Using an 18mm socket, we're going to go ahead and remove this nut here. Now we're going to go ahead and remove this nut on this rearward mounting bolt. Using a 21mm socket with a swivel and an extension, we're going to go ahead and loosen the ball joint nut here. Once it comes loose, we're going to thread it back on. A couple of threads there. With the vehicle already raised and supported on jack stands, we're going to go ahead and use a jack just to put underneath the knuckle itself to support this area. We're not going to lift the vehicle, we just want to support the existing weight because we're going to disconnect the upper control arm ball joint here, and once this separates, we don't want any of the suspension to drop or shift around. So let's go ahead and now loosen this ball joint. I'm going to go ahead and use the pickle fork here. So what you want to do is you want to grab some sort of strap. We're going to use this unit here. And the purpose of this is to keep the whole knuckle from pulling out and pulling the CV axle out of the diff here. So I'm going to go ahead and anchor this. There we go. Now we're able to get this back bolt loose. I'm going to go ahead and tap this out. Now with both bolts removed, go ahead and remove the control arm. Let's go ahead and get the upper control arm lined up into the chassis. We're going to take our forward mounted bolt. We did clean it, put some anti-seize compound on there. I'm going to go ahead and get that bolt lined up in there. Get that in. We'll go ahead and get the rear bolt installed. With both bolts installed, we're now going to go ahead and install the nuts on the back side. Do this for both. Going to remove the castle nut off of the ball joint. Go ahead and line up the knuckle and work that ball joint into the knuckle itself here. Just put that in place. All right, I'm going to go ahead and use our ratchet and our socket and an adjustable wrench on the back side of the bolt there. Let's go ahead and we're going to bring that nut down, but we're not going to snug it down yet. I'm going to go ahead and do the same for this forward bolt. With all 3 points loosely connected, we can now safely go ahead and remove our support bungee here. We're going to raise the suspension to its ride height. Anytime you replace a major suspension component like this here, you want to go ahead and make sure that the vehicle is at its natural ride height before you tighten down the bolts. Once you do that, then you want to go down and get an alignment done immediately. Now we're going to go ahead and torque the upper control arm to frame bolts to 75 foot-pounds. So once we have the nut thread tightened up by hand, we're going to go ahead and torque this to 55 foot-pounds. Once the nut is torqued, we're going to go ahead and feed the cotter pin through the slot here. You're going to bend that over. And we're going to go ahead and use our cutters here and trim off the excess. Now in the upper portion of the ball joint, you want to go ahead and put your grease fitting. So go ahead and start getting that threaded by hand. Spin that down. I'm just going to go ahead and snug that down. You just want to make it snug. If you over tighten it, you'll tear it right out. You don't want to do that. Now you want to go ahead and get your grease gun and grease this up until this boot fills up a little bit with grease. You'll be good to go. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to grease it up until you can see the boot starting to swell out. You don't want to grease it up until grease blows out of the seal here, but you want to make sure that there is some grease in there to lubricate that unit. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the wheel. And get all the lug nuts started by hand. Then we're going to go ahead and snug up the lug nuts. I'm going to go ahead and torque down the lug nuts to 135 foot-pounds.